This is the biggest blow against drug trafficking in our country this century. This blow is only comparable to the fall of Pablo Escobar in the 1990s.
It means now that the city is at the center of a major and bloody turf war, making it one of the most dangerous cities in the country.
De años trabajando en esto, ¿no? Este año ha sido el más violento en cuestión de asesinatos, pero se ha mantenido en reserva, o sea, una autocensura por seguridad. No escribir todo lo que sé, porque eso es una sentencia de muerte.
Organized crime has plagued societies for centuries, and today there is no sign of stopping it. Instead of getting better, things are actually getting much worse and more brutal. In this video, we look at some of the world's most notorious criminal gangs. Behind the most dangerous of these are the most deranged leaders, and what they will do to send a message to their enemies is pure evil.
To the family members of the victims, this is a terrible tragedy because children and innocents lost their lives.
After this case, you'll never ever want to bump into the most dangerous cartel leaders who killed and posted online.
There are three cartels fighting for power: the Sinaloa Cartel, Jalisco New Generation, and the Tijuana Cartel. Although there are many other cartels in Mexico, these three, plus another known as the Gulf Cartel, are the most powerful in the country. Now, the Tijuana Cartel traditionally ran the drugs business in the city, but the Sinaloa Cartel has moved into their turf and taken away some of the business.
This case will look at the most dangerous cartel leaders of all, who between them run the New Generation Cartel, or CJ&G, the Sinaloa Cartel, the Urabeños, or the Gulf Clan, and the Sicilian Mafia, or the Cosa Nostra. Spanning different continents, these groups have become notorious for their involvement in drug trafficking, violence, and illegal activities.
For decades, Mexico has been ravaged by violence from deadly drug cartels. 90,000 people missing and hundreds of thousands murdered.
Yo creo que la violencia no se va a acabar porque tenemos que imponer el terreno a nosotros, pues.
The New Generation Cartel is a Mexican criminal organization that emerged in the early 2000s. It originated from the remains of the Milenio and the Sinaloa cartels. Forming in 2009, the CJ&G quickly rose to prominence due to its aggressive tactics and territorial expansion. Within 6 months, the CJ&G had operations stretching from coast to coast, and they had gained a lot of power in a short space of time. Less than a decade after they began, they had become the second most powerful cartel in Mexico, with over 100 laboratories producing enough narcotics to pull in over $12 billion at street value. It established alliances with other criminal groups, especially the Sinaloa, who joined forces with them to fight off the threat of the Los Zetas. But as you expected, alliances like that don't last very long, and for reasons unknown, these two cartels went their separate ways. The cartel's violent methods, including mass killings and use of military-grade weaponry, have contributed to escalating narcotic-related violence in Mexico. The 1980s saw the birth of the Sinaloa Cartel. Named after the state of Sinaloa, its birthplace, the cartel was initially led by Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo. When he was arrested in 1989, the cartel was split into two groups, the Tijuana Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel.
Powerful is the Sinaloa Cartel. Almost the 70% of the world is infected by this cartel.
The Sinaloa Cartel established a vast network for smuggling narcotics into the United States. It employed sophisticated methods, including the use of tunnels, submarines, and aircraft to transport narcotics. They operated in 22 of the 31 states in Mexico, and through their ruthless methods, they became the biggest and most feared of all Mexican cartels at the time, making billions of dollars every year. Their sophisticated tunnel system was uncovered in May 1990, which went from a house in Agua Prieta, Sonora, and stretched around 100 yards across the border to Douglas, Arizona. This would be the tip of the iceberg in a huge operation to keep the supply chain moving from Mexico to the United States. The cartel's influence extended beyond drug trafficking, with involvement in money laundering, arms smuggling, and even corruption. The Urabeños, also known as the Gulf Clan, is a Colombian criminal organization that traces its roots back to the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, paramilitary group. Originally formed in 1984, the cartel increased its numbers when the Self-Defense Force was disbanded in 2006, and former members joined forces with the Gulf Clan. They initially focused their business on the sale of narcotics, then expanded their activities to include illegal mining, extortion, and other illicit businesses, causing a significant increase in violence in the region. As a paramilitary group, they oppose governments, unions, and left-wing associations. They are in fact responsible for more assassinations of political figures than any other cartel. Efforts by the Colombian government to dismantle the organization have resulted in the arrest and killing of key leaders. The Sicilian Mafia, commonly known as Cosa Nostra, is one of Italy's most brutal criminal organizations. It emerged in the mid-19th century and quickly gained control over various aspects of Sicilian society, including politics, business, and law enforcement. Cosa Nostra operates through hierarchical structure, with families or clans led by powerful bosses. These bosses, known as dons, exercise control over their territories and engage in various criminal activities, including the sale of narcotics, extortion, money laundering, and cold-blooded murder. Throughout its history, the Sicilian Mafia has been involved in high-profile assassinations. These killings led to increased public outcry and a renewed effort by the Italian government to combat organized crime. In 2007, a list that became known as the 10 Commandments was found at the hideout of mafia boss Salvatore Lo Piccolo. It's believed to be the guidelines every mafia member must follow. The rules were simple. No one could present himself directly to another of our friends. There must be a third person to do it. Never look at the wives of friends. Never be seen with cops. Don't go to pubs and clubs. Always being available for Cosa Nostra is a duty, even if your wife is about to give birth. Appointments must absolutely be respected. Wives must be treated with respect. When asked for further information, the answer must be the truth. Money cannot be appropriated if it belongs to others or to other families. People who can't be a part of Cosa Nostra, anyone who has a close relative in the police, anyone with a two-timing relative in the family, anyone who behaves badly and doesn't hold to moral values. While law enforcement agencies have made significant progress in dismantling Cosa Nostra through arrests and prosecutions, the organization continues to operate in Sicily. Law enforcement continues its efforts to bring an end to the mafia once and for all. Each of these groups' activities had far-reaching consequences. Governments and law enforcement agencies continue to battle against these criminal enterprises, aiming to curb their operations to dismantle their networks.
Cárteles siempre se pelean el poder. Siempre hay una disputa entre los cárteles por el poder. Quieren tener el poder del cártel más fuerte.
Understanding the way these organizations work is crucial in combating organized crime and ensuring the safety and security of societies worldwide. These criminal gangs are nothing without a leader, and these leaders will stop at nothing on the rise to the top. And we start with Mexico's most wanted and mysterious man.
Delta 1. Hey, ¿quién habla? Mira bien, hijo de tu puta madre. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tu puta gente a la verga. Soy Mencho, güey.
Amesio Asegura Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, is the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG.
Jalisco New Generation come from Jalisco State, and they deal mainly in cocaine.
Between the United States and Mexican governments, this crime lord has a price of over $30 million over his head. Born on either July 17, 1966 or July 17, 1964, depending on who you ask. The details of El Mencho's early life are something of a mystery, and he has managed to maintain a low profile compared to many other infamous crime lords. However, it is believed that he was exposed to a life of crime from a young age, likely involving minor criminal activities in local gangs in Michoacan. In the 1980s and 1990s, El Mencho's criminal activities reportedly escalated, and he became involved in drug trafficking. He was associated with the Milenio Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel, two influential criminal organizations operating in Mexico at the time. In the early 2000s, El Mencho played a significant role in founding the CJNG. The CJNG emerged as a breakaway group from the Milenio Cartel, seeking more autonomy and control over the drug trafficking operations. El Mencho quickly rose through the ranks and assumed leadership of the CJNG. Under his leadership, the CJNG adopted ruthless and aggressive tactics, leading to violent confrontations with rival cartels, including the Zetas and Templarios, as well as Mexico's security forces. The cartel's rapid rise to power was fueled by his territorial expansion and alliances with other criminal organizations, making it one of the most formidable criminal empires in Mexico.
The Tijuana cartel traditionally ran the drugs business in the city, but the Sinaloa cartel has moved into their turf and taken away some of the business.
As the head of the CJNG, El Mencho oversaw a vast criminal empire involved in various illegal activities. The cartel's primary focus was on drug trafficking. The CJNG utilized a sophisticated network to smuggle drugs into the United States and other international markets. The CJNG engaged in money laundering, extortion, kidnapping, and arms trafficking. But the cartel also engaged in less obvious criminal activity, such as illegal mining, fuel theft, and the production of counterfeit goods. These ventures generated huge profits. El Mencho's rule was brutal, and the CJNG gained a reputation for its extreme violence and willingness to eliminate rivals. The cartel carried out brutal attacks against its adversaries, including beheadings, massacres, and ambushes on security forces. It was El Mencho who had the sons of El Chapo kidnapped in return for $2 million and a whole load of narcotics. The CJNG's expansion and aggressive tactics often led to violent turf wars with other cartels, resulting in a surge of narcotic-related violence in Mexico. When he had to, El Mencho used military-grade weaponry, and his ability to evade capture gave him an image of fearsome and elusive crime lord. There are only a handful of photographs of El Mencho, and no one really talks about meeting him or even seeing him in his 25-year rule. Not satisfied with just Mexico, the CJNG established a presence in various Latin American countries, Europe, and Asia. The cartel's international connections allowed it to expand its drug trafficking operations and increase its profits even more. El Mencho's criminal activities attracted the attention of both Mexican and U.S. authorities.
He has a $10 million bounty on his head. Ironically, he lived in California some 30 years ago, where he was arrested on drug charges and eventually deported back to Mexico.
The Mexican government launched several operations to capture him, but he's managed to evade capture so far, leading to allegations of corruption with law enforcement. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, which you might know better as the DEA, made El Mencho one of the most wanted fugitives.
The top of the world's most wanted list for the DEA is the new top drug boss in Mexico, El Mencho.
The U.S. government also imposed sanctions on individuals and entities linked to the CJNG, aiming to disrupt the cartel's financial operations and hopefully bring an end to the bloody reign of El Mencho. Ismael Zambada Garcia, or El Mayo, was born on January 1st, 1948 in El Alamo, Sinaloa, Mexico. Raised in a rural farming family, he had a poor education and grew up in poverty. Like many young men in the region, he turned to the narcotics trade as a means to making a living. El Mayo's journey into organized crime began in the 1970s when he joined the Guadalajara cartel, led by Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo and Rafael Caro Quintero. During this time, he developed valuable connections and gained experience in the drug trafficking business. After the demise of the Guadalajara cartel, El Mayo aligned himself with someone who you may have heard of, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and together they co-founded the Sinaloa cartel in the late 1980s. As the Sinaloa cartel started gaining power, El Mayo played a key role in its expansion and influence. He was also known for his ability to navigate through complex networks of corruption, alliances, and rivalries. El Mayo's low-profile nature and cautious approach earned him the nickname, the Lord of the Tunnels, due to his frequent use of underground tunnels to transport drugs across the U.S.-Mexican border. Under El Mayo's leadership, the Sinaloa cartel became the most powerful drug trafficking organization in Mexico, responsible for a large chunk of their narcotics flowing into the United States. The cartel's operations extended beyond narcotics, with involvement in money laundering, arms smuggling, and other criminal enterprises. And its members are not shy about showing off their work.
Allá sembramos mota, sembramos solfia y otro negocio que no queremos que vea la gente ni el gobierno.
Do the police ever come by here,
Así han llegado a venir, pero solo pasan por caminos y uno ya mismo, pues muchas veces le da dinero a uno, 20,000, 50,000 pesos para que no te metas en 15 días. Otra vez quieren mujeres y eso.
Unlike his counterpart, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, known for his flamboyant personality and high-profile escapades, El Mayo preferred to remain in the shadows. He was considered a calculating leader, avoiding the limelight and rarely making public appearances. El Mayo's cautious approach helped him to evade capture by the law enforcement for decades, making him one of the most wanted fugitives in both Mexico and the United States. And this cartel leader has the toughest law enforcement living in fear.
De años trabajando en esto, ¿no? Este año ha sido el más violento en cuestión de asesinatos, pero se ha mantenido en reserva, o sea, una autocensura por seguridad. No escribir todo lo que sé, porque eso es una sentencia de muerte.
His ability to maintain a low profile allowed him to operate the cartel more discreetly than many other cartel leaders and effectively avoid direct confrontations with authorities. While El Mayo's leadership style emphasized secrecy, the Sinaloa cartel engaged in brutal turf wars and violent confrontations with rival cartels over control of drug trafficking routes. The cartel's main rival has been the CJNG. These conflicts have resulted in large-scale violence, including massacres, assassinations, and armed confrontations, leading to thousands of deaths and instability in regions where the cartels operate. One of the most high-profile incidents occurred when the chief of police of Mexico City found himself staring down the barrel of a gun.
Mexico City's chief of police was shot and injured early Friday in a dramatic assassination attempt that took the lives of 2 of his bodyguards.
The police chief survived the ordeal and sent a defiant message to those responsible.
Hours after the assassination attempt, Garcia, apparently from his hospital bed, sent out a tweet blaming the attack on one of Mexico's most powerful drug gangs.
Despite his cautious approach, El Mayo has been linked to these violent activities, though evidence has been hard to obtain. El Mayo's leadership role in the Sinaloa cartel has made him a prime target for law enforcement agencies in Mexico and the United States. Governments have offered substantial rewards for information leading to his capture. As a key figure in the world of organized crime, El Mayo's legacy continues to cast a long shadow over the narcotics trade and the efforts to combat it. His influence on the cartel's operations and challenges he poses to the law enforcement show the true impact of the Sinaloa cartel operations on both sides of the border. Dario Antonio Yusuga, born in the Yoruba region in Antioquia, Colombia, was exposed to a world of crime from an early age. His family's ties to illegal activities, including drug trafficking, play a significant role in shaping his path. Antoniel joined the ranks of paramilitary groups, particularly the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, also known as the AUC, which were involved in armed conflict and the narcotics trade. Following the demobilization of the AUC in the mid-2000s, Antoniel and his brother Juan de Dios Yusuga, known as Giovanni, formed a criminal gang that later evolved into the notorious and brutal Yorubinos. The Yorubinos, or Gulf Clan, emerged as a powerful criminal organization in the void left by the AUC's demobilization. Otoniel's and Giovanni's ruthless tactics and use of former paramilitary members helped the group gain control over the narcotic trade routes and illegal businesses, including extortion and illegal mining. Under Otoniel's leadership, the Yorubinos expanded rapidly, extending their influence to various regions in Colombia. The Gulf Clan moniker derives from their stronghold in the Yoruba Gulf region, but they have since expanded their operations worldwide, posing a significant challenge to Colombian authorities. Under Otoniel's command, the criminal organization has become well known for violence and brutality. Engaging in a wide range of criminal activities, they traffic large quantities of narcotics destined for international markets. They also control illegal mining operations and impose war taxes on businesses, causing economic instability and fear in areas under their control. Antoniel's leadership has been marked by violent confrontations with rival criminal groups and security forces. The Gulf Clan's willingness to resort to extreme violence, including assassinations and attacks on police and military personnel, has resulted in numerous casualties and contributed to the overall violence and insecurity in Colombia. With a multi-million-dollar bounty on his head, he managed to remain a free man through a combination of strategic mobility, sophisticated communication tactics, and the loyalty of his inner circle. Otoniel's ability to evade capture led to the speculation that he enjoys the protection of local communities, who fear reprisals from the Gulf Clan. Reports suggest that he moves between hideouts in remote regions, making it difficult for authorities to track him down effectively. But this cartel leader could not escape justice forever, and the law finally caught up with him.
Dario Antonio Yusuga, known as Otoniel, was found hiding in the jungle near the Colombia-Panama border. Hundreds of Special Forces troops took part in the capture mission.
He was seized after a joint operation by the Army, Air Force and police on Saturday.
But capturing one of the biggest crime bosses in the world came at a price.
One police officer was killed in the operation, which included 500 Special Forces troops and 22 helicopters.
The organization's criminal activities extend beyond Colombia's borders, with the Gulf Clan forging alliances with other drug trafficking organizations in Latin America and beyond. They've been linked to smuggling narcotics and chemicals that are used to mix or cut into narcotics through Central America, Mexico, and even reaching markets in Europe and Asia. That leaves us with one of the most infamous and dangerous criminal gangs that the world has ever seen, and one that will stop at nothing in pursuit of power. As we're about to learn, Mexico doesn't have the biggest and baddest criminal gangs of all. Italy does. Matteo Messina Denaro is a name that strikes fear and fascination in the world of organized crime. As the alleged head of the Sicilian Mafia, also known as the Cosa Nostra, Denaro has been one of the most wanted figures in the criminal underworld, with a reputation for extreme violence and cunning. Matteo Messina Denaro was born on April 26, 1962, in Castelvetrano, Sicily, Italy. Raised in a region with deep-rooted mafia traditions, Denaro was exposed to the world of organized crime from a young age. His father, Francesco Messina Denaro, was a member of Cosa Nostra. and it's believed that his early exposure to mafia culture influenced his future path. Donato's rise in the ranks of Cosa Nostra was swift and marked by ruthless ambition. He became involved in extortion, the sale of narcotics, and other illicit activities, gaining respect and fear amongst his peers. As his criminal reputation grew, he earned the nickname Diabolique, in reference to a popular Italian comic book character known for his cunning and evasive tactics. Matteo Messina Denaro was widely believed to have become the head of Cosa Nostra, following the arrest of Bernardo Provenzano in 2006. This position allegedly grants him significant power and control over the various clans and activities of the Sicilian mafia. Under Donato's alleged leadership, Cosa Nostra has continued to engage in a range of criminal enterprises, including extortion, racketeering, money laundering, and more. The organization's activities extend beyond Sicily, with connections and operations in Italy and abroad, reaching as far as the United States. Donato has earned a reputation for being one of the most elusive and well-protected mafia bosses in history, as well as one of the most evil. He took out his main rival boss, Vincenzo Milazzo, in 1993, but in his quest for power, no one was safe. He then strangles Milazzo's pregnant girlfriend to death and buried both of their bodies in the woodland. All in all, Donato was suspected of being involved in the death of 50 people.
Denaro once boasted that he could fill a whole cemetery single-handed.
Despite efforts by law enforcement agencies to apprehend him, he managed to evade capture for decades. Denaro is believed to have lived a reclusive lifestyle, avoiding modern technology and maintaining strict control over his communications. He's known to have used a network of trusted associates to pass messages, making the tracking of his movements and activities challenging for the authorities. And they were looking for someone who may have looked very different from what they expected.
He disappeared from public view in the early 90s. The police had to guess at his appearance, allowing for plastic surgery.
As the alleged head of Cosa Nostra, Donato is implicated in numerous acts of violence, including assassinations, bombings, and attacks on rival mafia clans. No one is safe from his grasp. He once kidnapped a 12-year-old son of a man who was testifying against him, holding the boy hostage for 2 years before strangling him. If that wasn't enough, he then dissolved his body in acid to prevent the family from burying him. His brutal tactics serve as a message to anyone who might oppose or betray him.
It was 2 illustrious corpses that cemented his bloody legacy. First, the bombing of anti-mafia judge Giovanni Falcone, his wife and 3 bodyguards.
You'd expect anyone to lay low after such high-profile assassinations, but not this mafia boss. And this was only the beginning. After a long police investigation, this mafia boss was finally brought to justice. In order to catch him, police wiretapped the homes of his family members. They spoke generally of people with cancer and cancer surgeries. This was enough for police to assume that Donato was seeking treatment of some sort. Investigators obtained the details of male cancer patients born in 1962 near Trapani in western Sicily and slowly narrowed down the search to 5 suspects.
Italy's most wanted mafia boss, Matteo Messina Denaro, has been arrested. Now, he's considered to be the leading figure in the Cosa Nostra and was reportedly captured when he visited a day clinic in the city of Palermo.
After years of mafia rule, the country now celebrated the arrest of its biggest boss.
Local residents in Palermo thanked the police. And wished the boss who'd embodied the mafia's potent mix of myth and malice good riddance.
In 2002, he was sentenced to life in prison. The world can sleep a little easier knowing this mafia boss is safely behind bars. What do you think of the baddest of the bad guys you've seen here today? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you can keep up with every gripping case. See you next time.